Any revisions? I looked at them, I thought everything was fine.
I think what I had a question about was actually, I think, the minutes from January. And I just wanted to be...
The light on. There you go.
There. I just wanted to be able to, I took a look at January minutes probably sometime in February, and haven't had the opportunity. I think Jessica and I spoke briefly about it, that I know last year when it went before City Council and what was voted on in reference to the band shell at Heritage Center, and that I believe it was the April 28th meeting that it was, the final copy was voted on last year, and that I know that I checked with Tammy and she helped me go back and find that at the April 28th meeting that I think it was Jessica said that the only change was to remove that about the band shell at Heritage Center.
She's talking about the city council.
City Council
minutes.
Okay,
Yeah. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Okay, and so when I saw it back in your minutes in terms of the band shell at Heritage Center.
There you go.
Yeah, Tammy, the last EDP that we have here, the one I think that you handed out this morning on page, the bottom of page 2, item C3 still has at the Heritage Center on it, and that needs to be removed.
Okay.
Yeah, we did remove that.
Yeah.
We did, yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was just
Yeah,
We
so
did, for some reason, that, it's
Popped
just
back
a
up.
line item, just for some reason.
And I thought it
just
pretty much
gets
was the exact
oversighted.
same words again.
Yeah.
And I did want to clarify that I have spoken with the Press Journal, and they're under new ownership, with breaking it down, and that was sort of an urban myth that got going, and that they want to help in the community, but they did not have any plans, nor do they have any plans to do that. But they want to do what we can to help get a band shell at some place, and that we'd be happy to work with that. So, thank you.
Well, I know Barbara has one in her plan.
Yes.
So we can include that when Barbara speaks in just a moment. Does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes from February?
so moved.
Second.
Everybody, aye? Yes, perfect. So moved, perfect. Okay, anybody for public comment? Anybody want to speak about anything other than what we just spoke about?
Barbara, did you want to talk or?
Well, we can go.
Next.
Yep. We don't really have anybody else in the public except for Jay, so we can move on to new business. So Barbara, if you'd like to go over your plan, because I know that what we'd like to try and do is work with you to try and make sure that what we're doing and what you're doing is a cohesive thing instead of you going after things and it's already on our plan. And so we'd like to work with you to try and make sure that we're doing everything to help you as well as,
Appreciate that.
so.
And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you. I don't know, I'm sure that many of you have been following the whole village concept as we've gone through. And the process has been very interesting, and the history on how we got to where we are today is that about 3-4 years ago, the Cultural Council looked at the opportunities to build a cultural arts center, to do some with the cultural arts center, and we focused in on the diesel plant. And then when the litigation came about, as well as the threat of trains, additional trains, and just the property itself, we realized that it was not going to work.
Can you move closer to the mic? Thank you. Sorry.
We realized that really was not property that was going to work for us. And so we started thinking about what else to do. So several of us spent the summer, a few summers ago, crossing the state, looking at, what other communities have done, and with the concept of a cultural arts village, since that seems to be very popular in many, many cities and has brought back areas that have needed some help. It's brought them back into, pretty exciting areas in a city for not only helping the community that in the neighborhood in which you're in, but it also becomes a destination point for not only visitors but for residents. And so, with one of the missions of the Cultural Council being on tourism, this looked like a really nice match for us. So we have identified the Edgewood neighborhood, and the borders on the Edgewood neighborhood would be State Road 60. It's the alley halfway between east and west, and that would be on the north side. On the south side, it would be 19th Street and sometimes 18th, because you go around the Freshman Learning Center. And then on the east side, it would be 14th Avenue, and on the west side, it would be 20th Avenue. Now, already some of that is zoned as our district, and that zoning is fine in more of the commercial areas. So this is why our focus was on the village itself, because that's where we would like to see like artists be able to live, to work, to have their studios there, and to be able to sell out of those locations. We want to make sure that we protect the heritage, that this isn't a redevelopment that goes in and tears everything down, that we want to encourage the people that live there to participate in the village. I'm sure that you'll see a lot of changes in the houses with different painting and other things happening to it to make it look more and more like a cultural arts village, like we're looking for. So we worked on those plans, and we go back to January of 1 year ago, and we presented the concept at a meeting at the Heritage Center, a public meeting at the Heritage Center, and we drew around 100 people to that evening. And when we just threw out the idea, we hadn't developed much at that point. We just threw the idea out to the public and got tremendous positive response and encouragement to go ahead and move with this project, see where it goes. And so we added to our leadership team, changing it from a cultural arts center in the diesel plant to the Cultural Arts Village. And we added some really good people, some residents of the neighborhood, some neighborhood activists, architects, landscape architects. We added a lot to reinforce the committee to make sure that we were getting a lot of representation. And then in February, we came before the City Council, who they were having a workshop. They were all sitting at this table and having a workshop, and we presented the concept then to the City Council, and they also encouraged us to move ahead. We've had several meetings since then. We've gone before the City Council almost every other month. We did ask them, once we got our plans moving a bit, we recognized that we did not have the we didn't have really the capability to do the technical pieces that are needed in putting together the plan. And so with Tim's help and Jim O'Connor's help, we went before the City Council and asked if we could, I guess it was a resolution, Tim, that was that we could contract with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to provide that technical assistance. And the City Council voted 5-0 that we do that. And so we would go before them, I would go before them about every other month and bring them up to date on where we were. And what we moved into then was a design charrette or workshop. And that was scheduled for mid-September. So we put out a lot of words. We started meeting in the community, and at one point, we had some of the community people, and they said, "Well, we have to worry about this and this and this," and they, crime. We have to worry about prostitution. We have to worry about drugs. We have to worry, and so. I went to the chief of police and said, "Well, we had one of our first neighborhood meetings, and this is what we found out." And Chief Curry said, "Well, I'd like to host the next meeting, and we'll host it. We'll do it at the city police department up in the training room." So that was really great. So the invitation came out from the police chief, and that night it was storming like crazy. And that night, these people would come in. They were wet. They were holding. We did little doorknob doorknob flyers, and we took them around to everybody in the whole neighborhood and put the doorknob flyers on that Sunday, and then I guess our meeting was on Wednesday or something. And these people were walking in with the flyers, and a lot of these people we'd never seen before. And they would make reference to the flyers, and like some would get up and say, well, our neighbors are talking about how we really needed to meet with Chief Curry because we've got these problems in the neighborhood, and then all of a sudden this appeared on my doorknob, and here we are. So we had a lot of community people there, and I must say I learned more than I ever wanted to learn about certain things. And the chief of police said he learned about things that he should have known about, but he didn't, and he was really glad they came. And so it was a really interesting evening, and it really brought a lot of the neighborhood, a lot of the residents together. So we were quite pleased about that. And I do know that Chief Curry has followed up on absolutely everything that was discussed at that meeting, and he also announced to them that I don't know whether they have the bicycles now or are getting the bicycles, but anyway, that the bicycles would be in that neighborhood. So he has been was very helpful in that way in moving the project forward. At our design meeting, prior to the design meeting, we took flyers around to all the businesses that would be, affected in that area, and had them come to a meeting in the Heritage Center, and we explained what we were doing, and we received, obviously we received their support. We also held a separate meeting for members of the Cultural Council, because we wanted all of them to see that this was an opportunity to bring a focus on all of the cultural arts in our county, not just the neighborhood, the neighborhood artists. That we could have a performing stage or a band shell or something, and we also could have things focused like kiosks, which can say what's going on at the theater, what's going on at the museum. We could have small little bungalows or little houses that could host or be available for other not-for-profits. I'd like to have in there a tourist center, where right now, if you've ever been in my office, you see stacks on my shelves of flyers and everything from our residents, and I really would like to have a place to have all of their materials about what the events are coming up, what's going on in the community. I mean, a better place than the shelf in my office. So those are all kind of ideas that we have. I'm very strong on the importance of cultural arts and medicine, and having lost two parents and having seen how the exposure of music and art help them in their later stages in life. I'm rather passionate about that subject, and I have a woman who is from Central, not Kentucky. I'm back home again. In Central Florida, one of the colleges there, who I have befriended over a couple of conferences where she has spoken, and she's going to come and talk to us about what we could do and focus in, like the Alzheimer's, Parkinson's does a lot. And it's not that we would do those things in the village; it's that we would bring attention to the things in our community that would address some of the bigger problems that are going on in the community. So, with all of this, we went into a design charrette that the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council really managed and provided the technical assistance. And the first day of it was on a Saturday, and we had about 125 people that came and spent the day, and they were sitting around on tables working on drafts and putting in their own ideas and designs, and everybody gave presentations, and I was really pleased because people stayed for the day. And then the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council team of 5 planners moved into the New Hampton Inn, and we took over the business center in the Hampton Inn for the next 6 days, and they worked in that in the in the business center there, and the public was invited. And it averaged around 35 people a day would come in and watch them work, comment on things, give suggestions, whatever. So by the end, by the next Friday, they had enough of a plan, ideas and a plan to present back to the public. And that night we had over 100 people at the Heritage Center who listened to the early proposal. To the work, and as Dana Little from the Planning Council said, did we get it right? Did we hear what you said? Are you happy with it? And it was all very, very positive. So we were pretty thrilled about that. And then just a month ago. Was it just a month ago? We went before the City Council with the final plan, and the final plan is on our website. We do have a website. It's called Vero Beach Cultural Arts Village, and you can reach it either directly by going to Vero Beach Cultural Arts Village, or you can go through the Cultural Council website, cultural-council.org, and it's one of the menu items at the top, and you can click on that, and it'll take you to the village website. But I have here the plan, a lot of the plan. Some of it's not the plan, some of it's my talking points. But the concepts that we have really involve the next. Well, let's talk about the next step. The next step after the City Council meeting is that we will the City Council with their resolution. Have the resolution that adopts the Cultural Arts Village report and directs the city staff to work, with our leadership team in making things happen. So we've been working very closely with Tim, and Tim has been terrific. He's come to most of our meetings. He's been very diligent about following and helping us with this. So it's now back in the hands of the planning, that piece of it, and that piece of it is a zoning overlay. And what that piece will allow, and Tim, I'm going to ask you to help me a bit on that, but one of the things that it will allow will be for artists to live, work, and sell out of their homes. And what are some of the other points, Tim, that would be considered in that zoning overlay?
Well, I think obviously the uses that you're talking about would allow that in a residential setting, but at a scale that would not change the basic residential character of it. So you could do, as she pointed out, artisans could be doing their work, they could be selling, they could be a gallery, we'd have small boutiques, bakeries, cafes, all to get people into that area, for interaction and all that. And also the other thing that she pointed out is to look at how we can bring in like accessory buildings and all that were the scale that would fit the historic nature of it. So you're going to look at some design controls that we'll have to have in that area. In fact, I talked to your architect, Richard, and I'd like Richard to start doing some work on that because that's vital to the whole thing. So rather than waiting for me to come around, but we're looking at doing an overlay that would allow these kind of uses within a residential area. The only impediment right now is we have to do at least a text amendment to the comp plan, and I'm working on the comprehensive plan. And unfortunately, our comprehensive plan is out of compliance with the state. We've missed our deadline, and I'm working on it right now but it will be about 4 or 5 months. But that doesn't mean we can't start looking at some of the regulations for this district. I don't want to hold anything up. I will have as part of the comp plan the amendments we need to put this into place. So when that happens, we'll be able to move forward on it. So it's going to be, I got a call from the press the other day. Well, what are the other kind of uses? What things aren't allowed? Look, we got a long way to go. The details of anything you do through a hearing process, there are a lot of things that come up that you aren't aware of, and so it's a process you go through in anything like that. I mean, we have the concepts that are laid out fairly well in the charrette report, and we're going to take those and apply those.
Tim, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
About the zoning and everything. Is it currently DTW primarily there?
No, that part of it is, and we've talked about it, and Barbara's just talked about it. Where we have the existing downtown zoning, that's going to remain that. I mean, it could be still part of the cultural village, but there's such a difference in the uses, intensity, and height limit, and that is intended to be a low-scale residential mix commercial, and nor do we want to get in the point where we're downzoning people's property, or we'll have we'll be in court for a long time. So we'll work around that, and that's part of the overlay district. But we do have some multiple zones that we'll have to look at. Most of it is RM 1012, but we have some professional office institutional. So we'll work around that. We could have multiple zones in the overlay. We just need to set it out. I'm going to try to do it the easiest way we can. And that's why I think I've come to the conclusion, a text amendment, the comp plan to set it, and then we can follow with the regulations, the land development regulations that would implement things. So I think that'll work.
So Barbara, I'd like to commend you, because it just shows a tremendous amount of work and diligence on your part and your team's part and everything. I'm very favorably impressed, and I think it really is a cohesive mesh with what this committee's doing and Main Street and the art people are doing. So, it seems like we're all working together. You heard about the bicycles things. I just wanted to mention that to Chief Curry. They do have the bicycles, and I think Tim confirmed that to the committee some weeks ago. And I've not seen them, but, I mean, the more...
Saw them Thursday.
You saw them? Okay, yeah,
Okay,
good.
So they've gone through their training.
Yeah.
They aren't going to let them on those bikes till they've gone through their training.
So that really puts that person in the neighborhood where they really can make those firsthand 360-degree observations, and I think you'll see. And I think what you said was very interesting. A lot of that neighborhood is what we would classify as blighted, and that's not all bad. I think that opens the door to some funding that we would not ordinarily get, because those type of neighborhoods can be lifted up and become somewhat better. And I also love the idea of what you're saying, artists living and working there. And I think often of the Leonard House, which is on the southeast corner of 15th and eastbound State Road 60, and they sell the soaps and the beads and that type of thing. And they've got upstairs, they have actually a rooming house, and it's really nicely, and I've been through all the rooms and everything. It's what a perfect place if they're, and I know they're interested in selling that property, and if somehow your group can acquire that, what a great, anchor for that whole, there are other places, but I just like the setup of that, and it immediately comes to mind, and if you needed help on that, we could certainly contact the owners and see if there's interest.
The owners have been in to see you.
Okay, good. So again, I commend you for everything that you've done. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's consistent with, our plans here.
It's been an interesting process, and we figured that we have involved over 500 people in the community as we've gone through the various meetings, and we've done interviews with them. We've had focus groups. We've done a lot of work with the community, so it's been a real community project, and I think that's why it's gone relatively smoothly to this point, is that we had buy-in early on by those who were going to most be affected. But I'd like to just spend a moment, if you don't mind, and tell you where we are now and how we're moving ahead. In addition to working with Tim on the zoning overlay, but we have created 3 committees, 3 professional advisory committees. One of the advisory committees is with community banks. And we have 4 community banks that we have asked to participate with us on this. We have 2 insurance companies who want to work with us, and we also have, I think it's 3 realtors who would like to focus in on the area. And it is these professional advisory committees that we're working with to come up with what could you do for people who want to live there, who want to buy there, who want to renovate, or who want to sell. How can you, we're working with them to come up with an advisory packet of some kind, of if you plan to come to the village or you want to get out of the village, how these organizations can help you. So we're putting together a packet, and it will resemble one that I think was in Rockford, Illinois, or something. Somebody had brought us some ideas of professional organization, of the professional advisory group, and getting them to put together. We'll put together a booklet, a little pamphlet, or something that can help anybody who's interested go to these organizations, and that they will be very friendly to the Cultural Arts Village. So those are in the process. We do have commitments from the organizations. We haven't held our first meeting yet, but we do have the commitments from the companies that are willing to help in that area. The second thing, we've created 6 subcommittees out of our leadership team committee. And those subcommittees, one of them, which you're going to hear a lot about, I know, is the mural committee. And we have our eyes set on about 6 pieces of private property that could be ready for, or that could be available for murals. We are in discussion now with AT&T to do something with that large AT&T building that's on State Road 60. Whether we'll get there or not, I don't know, but at least we have opened the door, and we are now in discussion. We've sent them our plans and so forth. We will be working on, we have a mural committee, and the mural committee, our people are very not only knowledgeable but experienced in doing murals, and we'll put together the process. We're not out asking for artists at this point. We want to put together the process. Number one, what legal responsibilities are there for painting somebody's house or a building or something. We need to deal with a lot of procedural things before we move ahead with that. But everybody's pretty excited about that opportunity, and we have about six or eight residents who are really willing to do something as well. So that's good with the mural committee. The second committee is an architectural committee, of which Richard Biaski is the chairman of that one. And isn't he chairman of your...
He's the chairman of our ARC, and that's why I suggested him to work with your committee and come back to the ARC, because that would be the logical body to be looking at the design on this.
So while we're not going to be able to tell people what to do, we want to give guidelines, and we want to give suggestions for if you want to renovate your house, if you want to do something, here are some guidelines for you, and again, that can also lead then into the professional advisory committee, helping them as well. So we want to be able to provide those kinds of opportunities for the people in the neighborhood. The third committee is what we call our infrastructure committee. And our infrastructure committee is chaired by Neil Sichterman. He is a landscape architect, and he is terrific. He's already put together some concepts and ideas, and what that committee will be looking at is, and those are, nobody's voted on those or anything. This was just presented as, here's some things we can think about. He's very interested in the tree canopies, he's interested in tree canopies and landscaping. The street signs, we want to, obviously we have to keep the street names as they are, but we also want to add to that sign the original name, like State Road 60 is Osceola Boulevard. We've got Florida Avenue is, I think it is 19th Street. But anyway, we want to go back to the original names. We also, that committee is responsible for bringing in some period lighting, so that we can have really nice lighting in there, but add lighting. There's a lot of very, very dark places in that area, and I think by lighting it up, we can not only, it can be a safety issue as well as as just an attractive aesthetics to the area. We have that committee also will be looking at trees. We'll be looking at like pocket parks that we might have in the small little areas that are still green, and try to preserve that. They will be looking at bike paths. a bike path through there, and we also will be trying to work with St. John's Water District, the one that...
St. John's River.
That'll be the Indian River Farms Water Management.
Indian River Farms Management.
They're on 20th Avenue.
Yeah,
is that?
we want to do something with 20th Avenue in that area. We're also looking at restrooms, public restrooms, in probably more toward the 14th Avenue, but there are some really, really cool ones that are pretty maintenance-free, that can be very artistically done. We've been all over the world looking at restrooms through the internet, and a few people have traveled, but there's some very, very exciting, interesting concepts, and so that would be something else that we would be working on. So that Infrastructure Committee has a lot of things that might be putting up something and busy street corners that's some kind of a sculpture or something. We have another subcommittee that let's see, we've got there's a fourth subcommittee there, and then there's a fifth. I'll cut back to that one. There's a fifth one that is going to be dealing with communications. How do we keep? We've been very fortunate and have had a lot of publicity, a lot of good communications on so far, and we want to be able to keep that energy going. And so we're working at from not only the website, but we're looking at all the social media opportunities and we want to look at just any way we can think of to come up with marketing, communications, public relations. So we've got a great little committee that's going to be working on that. And then we have a committee that's going to be working on development. And obviously development means we're going to come up with ideas for some fundraisers in the area and start with a little few of the festivals and so forth. And looking also then at grants, looking at sponsors and donors and so forth. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How many homes are in this culture center? Residential.
Gosh, Tim, do you have any idea?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I
50 maybe?
I'm sorry.
And Barbara, just a suggestion on the homes thing. Kirkpatrick, who's one of Tim's people, does all the GIS for the City of Vero Beach, and he could actually take that boundary that you defined earlier and do a rooftop map for you. He did one for the EDC, our committee right here, and he could define exactly how many homes, how many businesses are in that district. So maybe you should contract Jim Kirkpatrick and see if he could do that for you, and maybe at Tim's direction. That might be helpful for you.
Okay, thank you. I did think of the other committee. I can't believe I forgot it. This is the Freshman Learning Center. And the Freshman Learning Center, we in our report, we point out how ugly it is. Unattractive, I should say. Unattractive it is. When you come down 16th Street or 16th Avenue and you head right into the Freshman Learning Center, it is not very attractive. And so we have proposed, and you'll see it in the planning here, we have proposed like a loggia out front that actually is a replica, in a way, a stylized replica of the old high school. There's a lot of people in this community that love that high school, that graduated from that high school, and that had a lot of meaning to them. And to bring back at least the kind of the look through a loggia where it could be pretty inexpensive to be done, and again could be done with a lot of landscaping as well. And so that we're working with the school district on, as well as an outdoor stage that would be tucked back in that corner of the Freshman Learning Center, and it would be something that the school could use as well as public. So we're looking at a strong public-private partnership in how we can utilize a stage. We might want to make sure that it's angled correctly so that it doesn't cause noise problems in the neighborhood, and the corner of the Freshman Learning Center makes that kind of a perfect place for that. And then we're also working with them on doing a lot of landscaping on that property, because it could be very attractive, but right now it's pretty barren and it needs some help. I have to tell you that this is a strange word for me to say, but that Superintendent Rendell was almost giddy about the idea. I mean, he was really into it. He had read the whole report, and I had communicated with him several times over the last few months. But when we met with him recently, he has now assigned Scott. What's Scott's name? Sanders, and we've put him already on our leadership team, and he's also on that Freshman Learning Center subcommittee as well. So that's what we're presently doing and moving ahead with the things that we can do with, without the zoning overlay at this point.
Perfect. Sounds like you've been very busy.
Yes.
Well, I know that we had invited Chris here as well from the Tree and Beautification Committee. He was here last week but couldn't make it back today. I know that there's a number of things that you're trying to do with landscaping, and he is also trying to do that with a lot of canopy trees and such. So I want to make sure that every committee that is available in the city is working to the betterment of the city. Instead of you're trying to do your thing, he's trying to do his thing, we're trying to do our thing. Instead of working together, we seem to be working independently, and I'd like to bring that cohesiveness to everybody so that Chris works with you and trying to get things so that it's not all on one group to try and get one specific thing done.
I really appreciate that. Neil Sichterman, our chairman of our infrastructure committee, has already been meeting with Chris.
Perfect.
So,
Be more cost effective if we do it that way?
Yes.
oh yes.
Exactly.
And Barbara, one other thing too, because I sit on the board of Main Street, is that maybe to send Neil or yourself with Neil to come to one of the Main Street meetings and kind of maybe just give a little short presentation. We also are engaged in economic development, have an economic restructuring committee at Main Street as one of the 4 points of the program. So it would be good to coordinate. Again, we don't want to replicate your efforts. You don't want to replicate something that Main Street's doing, and maybe we could work together and get a lot more done. So
That's great. Vicki Gould, is on our leadership team and has been in the beginning, and we kind of consider her helping to represent Main Street and its interest as well as her neighborhood, her love of neighborhoods and her expertise in making
right person there.
making things happen. I know she's terrific. We just absolutely love her. So maybe Neil and Vicki and I could come and talk at a board meeting.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you for having us, and I really appreciate your efforts to pull together all the people, all the committees and organizations that are working for the betterment of downtown, and I think that's really, really important because we need you.
Yeah, there's a number of things that you had mentioned that we're going to go over next with our economic development plan, like the signage and the kiosks and things like that we're already talking about and have in the works. We're also working on a painted walking trail, pulling together a map that shows people historical things throughout the district. So that would also tie into what you're doing and kind of gets people in that area walking around. And
Anna Brady's on our committee, and she has been just wonderful. Very, very helpful.
well, if we don't have any more business for Barbara, we'll move on to our old business, which is our plan. And if we want to go through it, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read through it. The only thing I had on here was to remove that item from item 3, just the verbiage. But I think everything else looks great. I think all of our verbiage that we went over in February and January have been included in this plan. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to include? If anybody would like to change anything? Mike, you may not have had a chance to really go through it. Feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Do we need a motion to remove that language, to strike that Heritage Center language from that one?
Do you need a motion for that? Because it's technically already been removed.
I think it's just, it was a
fine.
yeah, that's all it was, you can
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, Mike, on anything? Okay, perfect. Do we need to make a motion to approve this to be, okay. Does anybody have a motion to approve this as it stands with the one correction on page 2?
I make a motion that we approve the action plan with the correction previously outlined on page 2.
All in favor? Perfect. Passes.
Okay, as your staff.
Yes, dear.
This, okay, it requires to be sent to the council by April 1. I would suggest that you do a cover memo
Certainly.
to them. And the other thing, because I want to get it through with a minimum, having gone through, as Barbara knows, how we had some issues with the last resolution with theirs, I would just state that as part of that a lot of the numbers haven't been done yet, but you're going to be working with these other groups. Stress that, because
Right.
council's going to, that takes care of that kind of thing. And certainly as you move forward the year, more numbers will be coming forward when you get, particularly now that we have in the downtown, this is the first year that there may be an increase. We don't know. We have not got it from the appraiser's office yet, but clearly there's a 4-story building that's going to be built in the downtown area. The sale of the old diesel plant, and it's saying that's coming back in the tax rolls. So you're going to see there should be some increases eventually occurring downtown. So, just a matter of wait, and I think that's part of it.
Year, right?
The first increment, well, the first increment year, but we'll see. So, but anyway, so that was just my suggestion. I think that's, and probably you as the chair, I talked to Tammy, we would probably have you at the second meeting in April, because they're supposed to consider this.
Okay.
So you'll need to make a presentation there
Okay. What
of some
day?
sort. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but
What day is that, Tammy? Do you know?
I want to say the 17th, and that's a night meeting, 6:30.
Okay. Okey-doke. Jay, do you have any input as a council member of information that we should include in the cover memo to help ease the process?
I think you just show up with a bunch of people. Quite seriously, I mean, the council
Probably right.
doesn't say no to a bunch of people.
Right.
that's true.
Especially people who are well engaged and are well spoken in the community. But I don't see a reason why anybody would want to reject that. I think the momentum that we've got is something we really want to keep going.
Right.
Yeah. And Barbara, you can help with that. Fill the room on April 17th. Yeah, I'll be into Keys fishing, so I won't be.
Oh, thanks, Harry.
Put that on her, that's not fair. Well, it looks like our next meeting is the 18th of April, so we'll be able to report on what happens on the 17th meeting. And we will be able to move forward at that time, and hopefully we'll have a unanimous approval. So, if there's no further business to conduct, we can adjourn. Anybody have anything else? No? We're good? Perfect.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome, Barbara. Thank you for coming and presenting your great project there. I mean, I think it's wonderful.
It's exciting.
Quickest meeting yet?
Great job.
Try. I aim to please.
Take notes.
Jessica, what day is the next meeting?